So I don't know. We were expecting, I think, a few more people, but I don't know if we want to wait or just kind of get started and they can hop in.
I'm an advocate of starting.
What's that, Bill?
But I would say let's move forward.
Okay, yeah, if people join in, we'll just they
Sure.
can catch up. So anyway, thank you everybody. I'll just start in. We are going to record this meeting. I think you probably got a little warning, just in case people are interested and unable to join us today. Um, so today we're going to talk about the watershed action plan for Lake Morey. I was just going to sort of provide like a little background. You may remember that we started this in July of 2022. So that was sort of our initial kickoff meeting. Many of you were there to sort of start to learn about what we would be doing. And then in the interim, since then, Mary will be describing a lot of the field work that she did looking at the roads and the tributaries, as well as some of the shoreland stuff. And then I mostly did the lake-wise visit. So that was a really great opportunity to actually meet many of you in person, and see your properties. And so I think I'm going to just talk about lake-wise briefly, and then we'll turn it over to Mary, and she can talk a lot more about the prioritization and the project development. So basically, since Lake-Wise was started on Lake Morey in 2017, there were 34 Lake-Wise visits, which is quite a few. And let's see, of those, 41% earned the Lake-Wise Award, and there were 6% earned the Undeveloped Land Award, and the remainder have some work to do. And so my hope is that, some of the properties, it was really exciting to see changes being made over the summer as I would go by. Other people expressed interest in changing how they manage their property. And so I think, over time, hopefully we can return and do more Lake-Wise visits. And the really exciting thing for me was that, well, you know what? I'm going to turn it over to Allison, who I think is on here, and she's going to share the news that we've achieved with Lake-Wise. So Allison, are you available?
Yes, I'm just trying to get my video to turn on. We'll see if it happens. So yes, Lisa, oh, there I am. As Lisa said, there have been 34 total Lake-Wise assessments on Lake Morey, which is fantastic. Yes, those have been done over the course of the last 10 years. However, 30 of them were done in the last 2 years by Lisa. So virtual round of applause for that. That's got to be some kind of LWAP Lake-Wise record, I think.
Well, and let me insert a big, huge thank you to the Lake Morey Protective Association for all of their hard work recruiting people so that I could do that many Lake-Wise visits.
Yes,
so
it's an extraordinary push to go from having, I think, 4 to 34 Lake-Wise assessments. As Lisa said, I'm not sure exactly what the percentage was, but I think there's 16 Lake-Wise awards out there on Lake Morey, which does put Lake Morey over the threshold of having at least 15% of the parcels on the lake receiving an award, which means that you have achieved the gold standard Lake-Wise Award for Lake Morey, which is very exciting for me as a Lake-Wise coordinator to hear. So you all will be receiving an award. Hopefully at your next annual meeting, I'll be working to arrange that with the Lake Association, and it's just a very exciting and very big deal. Like, you're only the 4th lake to achieve the Lake-Wise Award in the Gold Lake-Wise Award in the state. So you should all be very proud of that effort. So yeah, congratulations.
And how many lakes are there in Vermont?
Oh, 400 or more. So yeah, you're doing a really good job.
So kudos to everybody who participated in the program, and I'm really optimistic that we'll see some positive changes in the future as people think about how they're managing their shorefront property. Great. Well, thank you, Allison. I just wanted you to be able to share that news because I think it's a really big deal. And it should be a nice feature for your annual meeting in the next year. Okay, so without taking up too much more time, I want to turn it over to Mary if she is ready.
I'm ready. So good morning, everyone. We're excited to be here to talk about the Lake Morey Watershed Action Plan. Probably already know that the goal of this action plan is to identify sources of sediment and phosphorus to Lake Morey. And there are three sectors that we looked at. We looked at sources of sediment and phosphorus from streams, shoreland sources, and roadway sources. So let's start with the stream sector first. At the beginning of the project, we created a digital library and we compiled all sorts of water quality data that was available. It's really great to have that as a resource. And we looked at the water quality data and we talked to Greg Allen and we talked to Danielle from the DEC. And we came up with some study reaches, which, as you can see on the map on the right, those are the lower reaches of the major inlet streams. So we included Pine Grove Brook at the lower end, Glen Falls Brook, Big Brook, Gardenside, Aloha Manor, Bonnie Oaks Brook, and Pine Grove Brook. We weren't successful in assessing all of Pine Grove Brook because of lack of landowner access. But we did mail out letters to the property owners to let them know that we were going to do the work. And these stream walkovers were actually done last fall. This is a table showing the inlet streams. And you can see that Glen Falls Brook, which is in bold, is about accounts for, in terms of watershed contribution, about 22% of the watershed. So that's one of the fairly larger, large inlet streams. Big Brook is about 20%. And then some of these smaller streams like tributary A and B, they're actually near the Aloha camp. And while we didn't do a walkover in the fall, Lisa and I and my colleague Matt Borowski from Ripple Natural Resources, who's assisting me with the conceptual designs, we looked at those tributaries when we were out meeting with the representative from the Aloha Association. The next sector is roads. And we reviewed the municipal roads inventory. And we noted that either these road segments were either green, that they fully met the municipal road standards, or that they were pink in the watershed, which means they were not hydrologically connected. And because this is a small watershed, we just decided to include all publicly accessible roads in our road assessment. And then there's a few private roads that we did look at, or access drives, and we can tell you more about that as well. So our study area is pretty much the whole watershed. We conducted those road walkovers in June, and we've been back looking at some of the roads. We went back a couple times to figure out what we would do for conceptual designs. And then, like I said, we gathered this additional information. The third sector is lakeshore assessment. And as part of the digital library, we summarized the land cover information for the watershed. And then in June, we were really fortunate to be able to go on a boat tour sponsored by the Lake Association. So that was pretty helpful to be able to travel around the lake and just kind of get a different perspective and understand how things were connected spatially. I mean, my impression was that buffers along the lake are in general are in really good condition. So that was really good information to have. As Lisa said, she's conducted lots of lake-wise assessments, which is really exciting. And we followed up and met with landowners about potential projects. So I have 24 lake-wise or 29 lake-wise assessments. Sounds like I'm missing a couple then. Did you say there were 30, Lisa? 32?
Well, there was one more after you made the slide, and then
okay.
And actually DEC did that one. So
Okay.
I think I'm responsible for 29, but
okay, great. So the red dots show the location where the lake-wise assessments were conducted in 2023. So most of them were conducted in 2023. If you look at the green dark dots, those were when lake-wise assessments were conducted in 2022. We have one location in 2018 and a couple locations in 2017. So that's pretty good coverage of the lake, pretty much all around the lake geographically, which is wonderful. In total, from our stream assessments, our road assessments, and our shoreline assessments, we identified 18 projects. And for the stream assessments, a number of them were culvert replacements. We had a buffer enhancement project and a stream restoration project. For the road assessment, there are 6 projects, and they're all stormwater improvement projects. For the shoreline assessment, we have a buffer enhancement project along the lake and several stormwater improvement projects. And I have to say the sectors kind of run together, whether it's a stream or lake or road. You know, sometimes you'll have a lakeshore project that involves roads, or I don't see those sectors being really distinct. There's a lot of overlap between them, but we had to put them in some sort of category. So I've highlighted or put in bold the projects that we want to pursue for conceptual designs. So let's start at looking where the stream projects are located. There's one on Pine Grove Brook, at the lower end of the lake. Glens Falls Brook. We have a couple on Big Brook, a couple on Garden Side, and one on Bonnie Oaks. And I can talk about those more on the next slide, which shows some pictures. You probably are all familiar with, I guess, what's called locally Reservoir Road, the drive that goes up to the water tanks. So we looked at that road, and I think there are a few places that it can be improved. On the left side of the slide over here is where Pine Grove Brook is located. And we thought if we could add in some turnouts and put in some water bars to kind of break up the flow to reduce erosion in a few places, that would be helpful. We also looked at a project on the lower end of Glen Falls Brook. That's a really scenic brook. I walked up and looked at the waterfalls. That was really fun. And at the lower end of it, the slope really drops. And this is where naturally you would have an alluvial fan, or where there would be a lot of deposition of material because the slope drops, and the brook would kind of fan out and create a bunch of braids. But because there's land use in this area, and there's some structures that are close by, this section of stream's been heavily managed. And at first I thought we could come up with a project to help reduce the erosion that you see in the channel and on the banks. But I think it's a pretty risky project because of the infrastructure there. And we've decided that it's kind of a lower priority project. Moving on to project 1-3, that's on Big Brook at the Hulbert Outdoor Center. I think Lisa and I are both pretty excited about this project. There's some twin culverts that you can see in the picture, and they're perched, or there's a drop from the bottom of the culvert down to the water. And this can create a issue for fish passage. Lisa was in touch with the Vermont Fish and Wildlife Department, and they came out and did some electrofishing and found that there were wild brook trout in this area. So a project on the stream would be really helpful. Upstream of this stream crossing, there's a bridge, and downstream of this stream crossing is a bridge. So replacing this structure with something that allows fish passage and that also allows the transport of sediment through it would be really valuable. Because the structures are undersized, there's sediment that deposits at the upstream end of the culvert, and then you get the scour pool below. And when we look at stream culverts, we want to make sure that they're geomorphically compatible, meaning that they're able to transport sediment through the structure. And that's not the case with this structure. So both in terms of geomorphic compatibility and fish passage, it would be a pretty exciting project. The fourth project is also at the Hulbert Outdoor Center, and Lisa and I both made a site visit there, and she's been in communication with them. We've inquired about widening the buffer on Big Brook, and there's been some concern by the outdoor center that they won't be able to see their campers, and it's a safety issue. So we're hoping that maybe some sort of pilot project could happen where they could increase the buffers by creating a no-mow zone, maybe on one side at first to test out how that goes. And, eventually we're hoping that it could happen on both sides. Lisa, did you want to say anything more about that?
No, I think it'll be an ongoing conversation with Aloha to see if we can work out a way to implement that plan. I know they have to be concerned with safety. So, but it seemed like when we spoke with Ben Cole, that there might be some options for doing something like you described. So
there are a couple structures on Garden Side Brook that are undersized, and I think I was pretty amazed when I was out there, and I mentioned this to Lisa when we walked down there. The channel is really incised, and there's a lot of bank erosion below the Lake Morey crossing. And one thing that happens when you have undersized culverts is you don't have the natural transport of sediment, and you can get what's called sediment starving, where you end up with incision downstream of a structure. And I'm wondering if that's one thing that's contributed to the incised channel below these two structures. So while they're probably not as important for fish passage in terms of geomorphic compatibility, they would be good structures to undertake. The drainage area there is really small. It's kind of on the low end of what you would expect for brook trout to be coming in, to be residing in that channel. And then the last stream project is on Bonnie Oaks Brook, and this culvert's kind of deteriorated, but there is bedrock below this steep section of stream that goes down to the lake. So in terms of erosion, we didn't really think it was a high priority project. Okay, I'm going to move on to the road projects.
Hey, Mary, can I just insert a question real quick that came up in your so Bob asked that when you said that the goal is to allow sediment to pass through the culverts, he asked, doesn't the sediment ultimately flow into the lake, and isn't that undesirable? Maybe you could just speak to that for a sec.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think it's more undesirable that we're getting all this bank erosion and channel erosion because the channel is in size. So all streams have natural sediment that goes through them that gets transported. And so it's not excess sediment like you would get from bank erosion and channel erosion.
Thanks.
It's a good question. I think when we're designing structures, that's one thing we want to have is that you don't have the sediment depositing above and the scour below, because when you get scour below, you can also get erosion. So on our road projects, there were 2 identified on Bald Top Road. I have the impression that Bald Top Road is like an ongoing problem area just because it's so steep. And then there are 2 projects on the Aloha Camp Access Drive, a project on Brushwood Road 2-5, and then a potential project on Lake Morey Road. So Lower Bald Top Road, that's the road that's kind of across from Greg Allen's house. It's pretty steep. It goes up to that, is it a state park or state forest? This lower end could use a little help by raising the road and grading it kind of towards that ditch. We thought that was kind of a lower priority project. But Upper Bald Top Road goes on for hundreds and hundreds of feet. And there's a ditch that's right above where Reservoir Road comes in. And that looks like it's just been kind of a maintenance headache. And you can see Matt in this picture from Ripple Natural Resources. What we'd like to do is not rely so heavily on check dams and a rock line ditch lower on. The thing to do would be to intercept the water higher up and put in some sort of cross culverts, so the water just doesn't continue to flow down from the top of the hill all the way down hundreds and hundreds of feet. So I think out of the road projects, this would be the most useful in terms of a conceptual design. One of the access roads at the southern end of the Aloha Camp, Lisa initially identified this as a project, and Matt and I went out and looked at it with both she and Ben. And what we were thinking is shifting the access drive over, reestablishing this water bar, and trying to put some sort of sediment basin in the woods to treat the stormwater before it flows down to the lake, because you can see that this drive is fairly steep and the lake is directly below. So that's a project that we have on our list for conceptual design. Also above Lake Morey Road, which I'm calling the Northwestern Drive at the Aloha Camp, there are some erosion issues. And I know that Ben has been pretty conscientious. When the first time I went out to look at this site, he had already done some work on one of the other access roads between 2 of my trips. So I think they're aware that this is a challenging access road in terms of steepness, and they seem to be interested in working to improve it. A similar situation is happening on Brush Road near the shop parking lot, and before we went to the site, they had already done some work putting in a water bar above on the access drive above the shop to try to divert some of that flow that was flowing down the access road. So some work had already been done in that area. And then on Lake Morey Road, kind of at the northeastern end of the lake, there's a place where there's some erosion on the shoulder, and it comes down and it settles out down here, and then it also settles out on a lawn across the road. And at this point, this project seems to be low priority in terms of sediment reaching the lake, but at some point it might want to be revisited if this problem becomes worse. So we have this as a low priority project. Okay, I'm going to move on to the final sector, lakeshore projects. And we have 3 projects identified to move on to the conceptual design. So 3.1 is a buffer enhancement project at the Aloha Camp. That's right on the lake. I'll show a photo of that in a minute. Then there's some problems with beach erosion at the Aloha Camp. So we've identified that as a project. And then there are 2 homeowners that have private driveways that are really steep, that are really challenging. And we've identified those as projects. And then we've added, because there was interest in looking at the Fish and Wildlife boat launch, we were there the other day and looked at that area. So this is the area where the buffer enhancement could take place at the Aloha Camp, right along the lake shore. There's a little tributary or drainage that comes down in that location. And then the last 3 slides are of the beach area, and you can see where the beach is eroding. And then there's this little channel that comes down. So here's a zoomed in picture showing the beach erosion. And then this little channel that seems to have filled in some over time. I think in pretty frequent events, it overflows. So we'll be looking to potentially recommend some work in that channel so it doesn't overflow so frequently, because it overflows and then it goes and it erodes the sandy beach. So this area has been identified for the conceptual design. Here are the 2 private driveways that we are looking at, which we're also preparing a conceptual design for. And then we looked at the boat launch area, and that's a pretty tricky area. There's water that comes off the paved Lake Morey Road and the parking area at the top of the slope. So that's up here. And then it comes down this access drive to the boat launch. We didn't really see anywhere where there was room to treat stormwater or to send it in a different direction without sending it over a steep bank that's right on the lake, at the edge of the lake. So I think we have some minor recommendations for the boat launch, but at this point, we're viewing that as a lower priority project. But there's certainly some areas where the pavement is broken up and is eroding, and there's a steep pathway that comes down that could be blocked off and to prevent further erosion. There's some areas at the lower end, right by the boat launch, like where people back up, where the pavement is also broken off. So there's certainly some things in terms of maintenance that could be done there to reduce sediment. Okay. And then in terms of project prioritization, I've talked about which projects we selected for conceptual designs, and a lot of that is based on this rating system that we've come up with. There are 5 categories in the rating system. One is to improve water, whether the project improves water quality. And there's a phosphorus reduction tool that the Department of Environmental Conservation has developed that we've used to try to predict how much phosphorus would be reduced if the project is implemented. Out of 100%, this is given about the weighting of about a quarter of it is improves water quality. Then for landowner support, we've also said that's 25% weighting, because landowner support is really critical in terms of moving a project forward from design to implementation. And that ranges from a score to 0. So 0 is lack of interest by the landowner, and a score of 3 is landowner agreement. The third category is improve or protects riparian or aquatic habitat. That's 20. And that ranges from does not improve to 0, or a score of 0 to improve significantly, which is a score of 3. We've used cost effectiveness, and that takes into account 3 things: the total cost of the project, how much phosphorus was reduced by the project, and the estimated lifespan of the project. So that's basically measured in pounds per kilogram per year, and that's an output of the phosphorus tool. And then we thought it was important to have this additional benefits category, which is 10% of the scoring or weighting. And so if it improves or protects infrastructure, it can get a point. If it's a demonstration project, or if it provides opportunity for education, if it reduces peak flows or erosion, or reduces flooding. And so you can get a point for each of these categories, up to 3 points maximum. So our plan is to finalize the project prioritization table that we've developed, and then prepare conceptual designs of the top 10 projects. Then we'll be working with Lisa to prepare a draft Lake Watershed action plan, which should be completed in about March. Do I have that right, Lisa? And this is our contact information. Feel free to reach out if you have questions.
Thanks, Mary. So I think just to clarify, we will be putting this together, and I'll be reaching out to landowners to gauge their interest in, as Mary was saying, it is important to have that support, and that goes into the scoring system. So now that we sort of have the priority projects, we'll go forward from there. And then in March, we'll do another presentation to sort of follow up and wrap up this whole process and have a watershed action plan finalized in April. So I don't know if anybody has any questions they'd like to ask the group or Mary in particular.
I have one. So I think it's a confirmation that the issue of salting the road in the winter is outside of the scope of the watershed action plan.
Yes, I would say so.
I think a lot of us would love to see a recommendation of to not salt the roads. I don't believe there are any. The reason it is salted apparently is for school bus usage, and presently I don't think we have any students who were picked up on the Lake Morey Road, and yet my sense is there's still some salting that takes place that's pretty detrimental. A disclaimer: I don't have a lot of expertise as to whether they are or not, but I know it's an issue that we discuss frequently. So if there's any place we could at least put in a recommendation to not salt and use just sand, because I know safety is an issue, and I'm not sure how the Hulbert Center feels about this, because I know there are times when they have bus loads of participants coming in from outside. So I did want to address that to see if it's on the agenda anywhere. Thanks.
Yeah, it's my impression they have students there pretty much year round. I was there the other day and things were definitely busy at the outdoor center.
Mary, this is Bob Wertheimer. May I ask a different question? I was thinking about the boat access and its paved ramp, and wondering if other lakes have a different approach to their boat access. The paved ramp, if I understand it correctly, is an impervious surface, and rainwater runs down it, and that's undesirable, if I understand it correctly. And I'm just wondering if we ought to include in the action plan a recommendation that be replaced with something that would allow rainwater to soak into the soil. I don't know what that something would be, but I just thought I'd put that on the table for discussion.
Yeah, we talked about that, Matt and I, when we were out there. It's a pretty steep access road, and if you put in some of those pervious pavers, I don't think they would hold up very well with all the traffic that goes down that road. But that's something we can think more about.
Mm-hmm.
I think I'd want to have a better idea of how to go about that before making that recommendation. But
Okay.
it's an interesting point.
Hey, Allison or Keith, have either of you encountered that kind of materials on other public access boat ramps? Have you seen anything?
I have not. I would say most fish and wildlife access areas are a combination of gravel and some paved. The Morey access is probably one of the steepest ones I've seen, though. And I kind of agree with Mary. I'm not sure you're going to find a better solution, but happy to have
Yeah,
you guys think about it.
yeah, it's tough because it goes down that access road and there's just nowhere to treat the stormwater at the bottom. It just goes down to where the boat launch is. So I think
But let me, as to the steepness, let me suggest this: the land to the north of the boat access is town land, town property, and it seems to me that what the town might consider doing is reconfiguring the ramp so that it starts further to the north and makes a more gradual descent along, down to the eventual turnaround area.
I have one opinion too, that we want to be careful of making that access so nice that it increases the amount of boat traffic that we get, because presently I think it limits access and keeps some of our boat traffic down. So we have to be careful about what we ask for, but I think it is worthy of asking that question and studying it. Also, one other thing before we end up signing off, I want to express appreciation to Lisa and Allison, Mary, and everyone at the state of undertaking this project and communicating very clearly with us, including this Zoom meeting. It's been very informative.
Well, it's been our pleasure. You've been great to work with, and hopefully we'll come up with a great plan. So. Jennifer, you've had your hand up for a while now.
Yeah.
Did you have a question?
Yeah, more of a couple comments. First of all, really great job, team. Thank you so much for putting this all together. I'm for everyone here, I'm the district manager of the White River Natural Resource Conservation District. So I work with Lisa. And what I'm really struck by, this is a comment to the DEC staff that are on the call. I've been the piece of these lake watershed action plans that I feel like is lacking is that nutrient loading piece, like what was brought up around maintenance of roads, but also the lack of focus on septic. I'm I'm sort of just in general disappointed with the scope of these watershed action plans, that they don't include, if we're serious about reducing the human impact and nutrient loading on these lakes, it feels like we're ignoring really key components. Is there, does DEC have any comment on that, or is there any desire to expand the scope of these action plans?
I'm happy to comment, and Keith can also if he so desires. No, there's no plan to expand the scope of these action plans at this time. Usually as part of a Lake Watershed Action Plan, we encourage lake associations to hold a wastewater workshop, which Lake Morey and Lake Fairleigh did. I think Lisa coordinated that. And, part of the issue is that our residential wastewater is in a different department than lakes and ponds. It's not even watershed management. And I think the opinion of our wastewater colleagues is that it's unlikely that septic is contributing a large amount of phosphorus into lakes at this time. And we have modeled that for some lakes. Some have a bigger risk from septic than others. But it's just not something that we have the capability of assessing the same way we assess roads or shoreland or streams at this time.
That's very surprising to hear. I've only ever heard the opposite, that it's incredibly likely that our septic systems that are older than 30 years old are leaching. So yeah, it's totally different from what I've been hearing.
Yep. And I'm not a wastewater expert, so if you have more questions, I would direct you to Kristen Ashmakis in our wastewater department, who held the septic or the wastewater workshop for Morey and Fairleigh and others.
On a positive note, and maybe it was the folks who participated in Lakewise, but overall, I was tremendously impressed with the level of awareness that people had about their septic systems, the frequency that they were maintaining them, and a lot of people have invested a tremendous amount of money to upgrade their septics. So at least the people that I was working with, by and large, are really well aware of the influence of septic. So that was nice to hear. Of course, maybe I got the low-hanging fruit. I don't know, but definitely. And kudos to the camps too. You guys have done a very comprehensive job of maintaining your septic systems, and it's great to hear how carefully they are being paid attention to. Jennifer, did you have any other comment?
No, that was all just really, really great job. Thanks for all the progress here.
Great, thank you. Okay, well, if there are any other questions, feel free to ask, or if you think of something later, just shoot me an email or something, and we'll track that stuff down for you. Mary, did you have any final thoughts?
No. Thank you very much. It's been a really friendly watershed to work in, and we appreciate all your efforts.
I have one more question, just looking for a little bit of advice in regards to how we might best communicate with members of the association of where we're at this point. If we have a brief, say, written summary, or should I take the notes that we've taken here and attempt to summarize? There's a lot of information in there, or how much information should we share with our membership? Or is there a way they can access this information?
Yeah, I think we can share the slideshow, right?
Yeah, Bill, would putting the PowerPoint or having a copy of that or putting it on the website, would that be
super? We will make that happen. I see our kind of tech person, who is also on the WAP committee, is not in attendance, but I will communicate with her, and if we can get access to this and then put it on our website, that would be super. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, and then, you know, if you have taken notes and there are things you want clarification on, feel free to ask and we can, you know, or if you want to do a notice in the newsletter or something like that and just want a little comment or whatever, happy to help with that. So
Great, thank you.
And who is your technical person? I guess because I can
Denise Druin.
Okay, yep,
I think you have her communication information.
I do. Yep. So
I'll have
I'll
her
make
reach
sure.
out to you or
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay. Great. Okay, well, super. Thank you everybody for logging in today and following along with this. And I look forward to talking to a lot of you in the future as we move forward with this. And like we said, sort of early spring, we'll have another meeting and kind of be able to follow up on all of this and move forward with the final plan.
Thank you.
Great, thanks.
Thank you.